us move on to the next concept, that is attributes. So in database, whenever you learn anything, let us learn it with the help of an example. It would be easy to remember. Okay. So there are 6 different types of attributes. So let us see what are they. So I will start with the example instead of definition. You can take down the definition by pausing my videos because I will be verbally telling the definitions as well. Okay. So let me consider the entity employee, right? So what is that particular thing which distinguishes two different entities? Okay. So this is an entity employee and this is an entity vehicle. Now, how can I tell these two are different? Yes, because I know the employee is different from the entity vehicle by its name. Now, for example, let me rename these entities. Entity A and entity B. Now, how do I tell entity A is different from entity B? Right? So, I need something which describes or defines or helps me understand more about the entity. So, that something is called as a properties of the entity. Okay. So, if I say this has the property employee ID, and if I say this has the property vehicle name, then I can say, oh, okay, this is describing something about the employee. This is describing something about the vehicle. So these two entities are different. And this entity is something about the employee. And this entity is something about the vehicle. So for a layman, how does he or she understand that there are different entities with the help of its properties? So these properties are called as attributes of the entity. And in your ER diagram, you represent the attributes as a oval. Okay. Now, having known what the attribute is, let us understand the different types of attributes. So, therefore, I can term attributes as the properties which helps us to describe and distinguish the entities. Okay. Now let us study the different types of attributes. Now as I said, we will be studying everything with an example instead of going in terms of definitions. Okay, so that would help you understand better because definitions are available everywhere. Okay. Now, to study the type of attributes, let me consider the entity employee. Okay. Now, I have an attribute employee ID. Now, you tell me, can I have more than one value for employee ID? No, right? I can have for one employee, I can have only one employee ID, right? So such attributes are called as single valued attributes. Okay, so employee ID is a single valued attribute. As the name suggests, it can have only one value. Properties. Okay, so property is nothing but the number of properties or the number of maybe houses you can say or land the employee owns. Now an employee can own more than one house, right? So I can have more than one value for property, right? I can say that there is one house in, say, Bangalore, there is one house in Delhi, there is one house in Bombay, right? A rich employee. So this can have more than one value for the given employee. So such attributes are called as multi-valued attribute. And in your ER model, multi-valued attribute is represented as a double oval. Now don't confuse it with the weak entity identifying relationship. Okay. Now the next example is about simple attribute. So what is a simple attribute? Simple attribute is an attribute which cannot be divided further. Now let me again consider employee ID. Can you divide employee ID further into other attributes? No. So this is a simple attribute, comma, simple attribute. Now let me consider the example of address. I can divide this address into multiple other attributes. Maybe city, correct? So address can be divided into, I can say, city, or it can be divided into city and state, etc. Right? So the attribute address can be divided into city, state, and other things as well as composite attribute. Okay. Now the next type of attributes are the attributes which is both composite and multivalued. Okay. So if the attribute is both composite and if the attribute is multivalued, then such attributes are called as complex attributes. The last type of attribute is derived attribute. Now, for example, let me consider date of birth as one of the attribute. The other attribute is age, correct? Now I can get the value of the age from date of birth, right? If I say the date of birth is January 1st, 1986, for today I can get what is the age of the employee. So if at all I have a attribute which can be calculated or which can be derived from the other attribute, then such attributes are called as derived attributes. And how can I represent it? I represented it with a dotted circle in ER models. Okay, so these are the different type of attributes. One is single valued attribute, that is which can have only one value. Simple attribute, that is the attributes which can be further divided. Multi-valued attributes which can have more than one value for a given employee. Composite attribute, which is the exact opposite of simple attribute, that is it can be divided further into different attributes like city and all. The next one is complex attribute, any attribute which is both multi-valued and composite. Such attributes are called as complex attribute. And then we have derived attribute. Derived attribute is nothing but the attributes which are derived from the other attributes of the entity. Okay, so this is about the different types of attributes.